Things and on the walls? Toronto! Toronto, come on. Get mad about this stuff. Happy Pride! Can we please start funding our public transit so we don't have to have corporations putting their bullshit all over our subways? Fund the subways! I don't want to have to see Crest toothpaste as I get onto public transit. We should have art in here. We have artists who should be making art for the public in these spaces. No more of this Crest bullshit is everywhere. These are public spaces and they should reflect that. The corporations. It's a fucking virus. It's a disease. Look at this shit. The advertising things and on the walls? Toronto! Toronto, come on. Get mad about this stuff. Happy Pride! Can we please start funding our public transit so we don't have to have corporations putting their bullshit all over
That was not realistic. ¿Cómo crees que voy a frenar así de cabrón? Sí, bueno. Bro, ya choqué. Bro, ayer literal me quedé dormido y me espanté. Casi me salen jugos rellenos. Estoy por ser tóxico. ¿Qué significarán esas tres líneas rojas? Like, frenar. Oh, camino, camino. pero ¿por qué no me avisa que cambia? Ay, where does it say 50 there? Oh, miles. Uy, qué horrible está manejando esta zona. Ese carril, señor. Bro, this is so smooth. How the fuck do I know when the speed changes though? Es por estados, I'm Cardiff. And then go up to Cambridge. Lol. Alright. vamos a hacerlo del que no hice la otra vez. Why do we play this? ETS to same. Creo que era por ahí, pero eran shorts, ¿no? A ver, ¿cuál ya vi? Online, offline, in my truck. Never tried this. Sí, güey. No. Settings. Realistic gameplay. You need to know good settings, bad settings. ¿Cuál había sido, man? Feel the road, suspension and cabin.
Let's make it feel like you're sitting in a physical truck. Set your suspension stiffness to about 20%. This
Suspension stiffness. I don't know if I'm using this. I'm gonna, well, minimize it for now. Bruh. Oh my goodness. Luego.
gives you a nice balance where you can feel the road without it being a spine-shattering experience. Then the most important part, turn on cabin suspension and set it to about 0 to 5%. Suddenly, your viewpoint isn't glued in place. The cab will move independently over bumps and through curves, just like a real truck cab. Let's make it feel like you're sitting in a physical truck.
Right, was that it? Start using these truck controls the game doesn't explain. Try them. Okay, essential controls you must use.
To an ATS, you can either drive your truck or just pretend like you are. The games give you a lot of controls inside your cab, but it's really up to you to understand and use them properly. Just to be clear, I'm not talking about the horn or the wipers. I'm pretty sure everyone should have figured those out by now. These are the systems that the game barely explains, but they are the ones that actually make you feel like a real trucker. So let's get started, and by the end of this video, we will also uncover the most useful feature this game has ever seen. So let's start with something that many players probably noticed in the settings, but never really paid attention to, the lane assistant mode. This system has two different options. The first one is the lane departure warning, which simply gives you an audible alert if your truck starts drifting out of the lane you're currently driving on. The second option goes a step further. The lane keep support will actually steer the truck slightly to help you keep your truck inside the lane. It's important to mention that this system only activates at speeds above 55 km per hour, and it's mainly designed for highway driving. I would say it's pretty well designed. I will also check if you're using your turn signals, meaning that if you remember to signal properly before changing lanes, the system won't interfere with your steering. Now, don't get me wrong, this won't feel like a Tesla or a Pilot, and no, you won't be able to grab a snack while the truck keeps going, but it definitely helps during those long highway segments, where I know for a fact some of you probably have a movie playing in the background, or maybe you're doing it right now while watching this video. Next, let's take a look at the hill starter system. This is a really cool feature. It's actually one of the most recent one that was added into the game. If you ever stopped on a steep hill, you probably noticed how easy it is for you to grab a snack while the truck keeps going, but it definitely helps during those long highway segments, but never really paid attention to different options. The first one is the lane departure warning, which simply gives you an audible alert if your truck starts drifting out of the lane you're currently driving on. The second option goes a step further. The lane keep support will actually steer the truck slightly to help you keep your truck inside the lane. It's important to mention that this system only activates at speeds above 55 km per hour, and it's mainly designed for highway driving. I would say it's pretty well designed. I will also check if you're using your turn signals, meaning that if you remember to signal properly before changing lanes, the system won't interfere with your steering. Now, don't get me wrong, this won't feel like a Tesla autopilot, and no, you won't be able to grab a snack while the truck keeps going, but it definitely helps you in those long highway segments, where I know for a fact some of you probably have a movie playing in the background, or maybe you're doing it right now while watching this video. Next, let's take a look at the hill start assistant. This is a really cool feature, and it was actually one of the most recent one that was added into the game. If you ever stopped on a steep hill, you probably noticed how easy it is for your truck to roll backwards when you release the brake. The hill start assistant solves that problem essentially by holding the brakes for you when you start moving, giving you enough time to start accelerating without rolling back. It's a small feature, but especially useful if you're driving with manual gears. It will make your hill starts a lot more smooth. Now, I especially want to talk about the cruise control. I know most of you already know what it does, but I don't think everyone uses it at its full potential. And just in case you were living under a rock for the past 70 years, cruise control is a system designed to maintain your vehicle at a constant speed without you needing to hold the throttle. And for a fun fact, this was invented back in 1948 by a blind American engineer, Ralph Dieter. He was inspired to create this because he was very annoyed by his driver's inconsistent speed. The more you know. Now, back to our games. There's actually a bit more to it. The system allows a speed tolerance of about 5 km per hour, meaning that your truck can slightly accelerate or decelerate before adjusting the throttle again. It's extremely useful for maintaining a steady speed and avoiding fines, but also you can use it in more subtle ways. For example, let's say you're just leaving a city where your speed limit was 50 km per hour. You can just tap the increase key 6 times, and your truck was very annoyed by his driver's inconsistent speed. The more you know. Now, back to our games. There's actually a bit more to it. The system allows a speed tolerance of about 5 km per hour, meaning that your truck can slightly accelerate or decelerate before adjusting the throttle again. It's extremely useful for maintaining a steady speed and avoiding fines, but also you can use it in more subtle ways. For example, let's say you're just leaving a city where your speed limit was 50 km per hour. You can just tap the increase key 6 times, and your truck will smoothly accelerate until it reaches 80. A real trucker would use this instead of his gas pedal more often than not. Just keep one thing in mind. If you're trying to maximize fuel efficiency, abusing cruise control on a big incline can actually hurt your mileage. Still, it's a very overlooked feature that can be used for more than just holding your speed. Next, let's talk about the auxiliary brakes, because in a real extremely useful for maintaining a steady speed. And for a fun fact, this was invented back in 1948 by a blind American engineer, Ralph Dieter. He was inspired to create this because he was very annoyed by his driver's inconsistent speed. The more you know. Now, back to our games. There's actually a bit more to it. The system allows a speed tolerance of about 5 km per hour, meaning that your truck can slightly accelerate or decelerate before adjusting the throttle again. It's extremely useful for maintaining a steady speed and avoiding fines, but also you can use it in more subtle ways. For example, let's say you're just leaving a city where your speed limit was 50 km per hour. You can just tap the increase key 6 times, and your truck will smoothly accelerate until it reaches 80. A real trucker would use this instead of his gas pedal more often than not. Just keep one thing in mind. If you're trying to maximize fuel efficiency, abusing cruise control on a big incline can actually hurt your mileage. Still, it's a very overlooked feature that can be used for more than just holding your speed. Next, let's talk about the auxiliary brakes, because in a real truck, the brake pedal is actually the last thing you want to rely on. Instead, trucks use additional braking systems designed to slow down the vehicle without constantly using the service brakes. The first one is the retarder. This should always be your most used braking system. A retarder works through the transmission, and it creates resistance that slows down your truck gradually. Most trucks in ETS2 allow you to control it in multiple levels, meaning that you can increase the braking force step by step. You can check if your truck has a retarder by looking at the transmission type. The R at the end signals that you do have it. This is very useful when driving down long hills, where maintaining a controlled speed when descending is much more important than braking hard and cooking your air brakes. Just like with the cruise control, you can bind keys to increase or decrease your retarder level, which makes it much easier to control while driving. The second system is the engine brake. Now, this works a bit differently. It's using the engine itself to slow down your truck, reducing the engine speed and helping the vehicle lose momentum. While the retarders is usually the primary system that you want to use, the engine brake works great as an additional braking when you need a bit more slowing power. And finally, you have the main brake pedal, which in trucks operates through an air braking system. You might be tempted to use it a lot more than you probably should because the game doesn't really punish us too much for doing so. But if you're trying to drive more realistically, the order should always be retarder first, engine brake second, and the main brake only when you really need it. Another cool control that many players overlook is the truck suspension adjustment. In real trucks, suspension height can be adjusted to help with things like loading docks or uneven terrain. ETS2 allows you to control the front suspension, rear suspension, and even the trailer suspension, raising or lowering them when needed. In most situations, you don't really need to touch those, but they can be surprisingly useful when connecting trailers, especially if the trailer height doesn't line up perfectly with your truck. Maybe you're using a modded truck or, a different kind of tires. It's a small feature, but one that adds a bit more realism to how the truck actually operates. Another interesting system that you can enable is the emergency braking module. This is a safety feature found in many modern trucks, designed to prevent collisions if the driver doesn't react in time. In ETS2, you can choose between two modes: vehicles only, where the system monitors the traffic ahead of you and you will automatically apply the brakes if you're about to hit another vehicle, or full detection mode, where the system will also react to the objects on the road, maybe a barrier. So if the truck detects a potential collision and you're not braking, it will step in and apply the brakes automatically. It's not something that you rely on all the time, and it can be annoying, but it's a small system that adds a bit more realism if you want to test it out. Next up is the differential lock. Now, in real trucks, the system locks the rotation of your drive wheels, helping the vehicle maintain traction when driving in mud, snow, gravel, or any other slippery surface. In theory, this should be very useful for off-road driving, but in ETS2, it's mostly more of a cool immersion feature than something you'll actually need. The game's off-road sections rarely demand it, and most of the time, you'll be able to get through it without it at all. Still, if you want to really understand how your truck works and the systems that come with it, it's a feature worth knowing about. Just don't forget to turn it off if you don't use it. So there you have it. The next time you fire up ETS2, you can feel more like a trucker than a player. And before we finish, remember that advanced feature that I mentioned earlier at the start of this video? Well, I don't know how many of you actually know about this, but your trucks actually come with these things that are called signals. Apparently, you can use them to tell other drivers on the road what you're planning to do. Maybe the most important safety feature. And make sure you always use them, because that's how you're always gonna stay safe on the road and keep on trucking. Cheers.
Try them.
Euro Truck Simulator 2 and American Truck Simulator are honestly some of the best simulation games ever. These settings can seriously transform the driving experience and make the game feel like a real trucking simulator. Before we go deep into the settings, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy trucking content like this. And if you want to see more clips, updates, and behind-the-scenes trucking moments, follow us on our socials. You can find all the links in the description: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and X. Alright, let's get into the first setting that I personally love using. One of the biggest immersion killers in ETS2 and ATS is actually the interface. Many players drive with a full routed visor covering a big part of the screen, and after a while it starts to feel more like a game HUD instead of sitting inside a real truck. But with the recent updates, SCS added a very nice feature that allows you to customize what information you see while driving in the interior view. Here is what I like to do. When you are inside the truck interior, press the F1 key to open the widget system. This allows you to control which small information panels appear on your screen. What I usually recommend is keeping only the tachometer widget visible. This gives you useful information like RPM and engine data without cluttering the screen. Then, if your truck already has built-in navigation inside the dashboard, which most modern trucks do, you can completely disable the large navigation interface. The result is a much cleaner view. You still have the information you need, but now you can actually enjoy the truck interior, the road ahead, and the environment without a huge GPS box distracting you. For classic trucks that don't have built-in navigation screens, you can keep the navigation widget enabled. That way, you still have directions available. Personally, I really like this setup because it feels much closer to how a real truck driver experiences the road. It's simple, clean, and very immersive. Now let's talk about performance. If you've ever experienced FPS drops in ETS2 or ATS, especially when driving in large cities or busy highways, you're not alone. It happens to a lot of players. And if you are the type of player who prioritizes performance over ultra graphics, then this next setting will help you a lot. The solution is the scaling setting inside the graphics options. Go to Options, then Graphics Settings, and you'll see a setting called You like this setup because it feels much closer to. Press the F1 key to open the widget system. This allows you to control which small information panels appear on your screen. What I usually recommend is keeping only the tachometer widget visible. This gives you useful information most modern trucks do, but now you can actually enjoy navigation screens. You can keep the navigation widget enabled. That way, you still have directions available. Personally, I really like this setup because it feels much closer to how a real truck driver experiences the road. It's simple, clean, and very immersive. Now let's talk about performance. If you've ever experienced FPS drops in ETS2 or ATS, especially when driving in large cities or busy highways, you're not alone. It happens to a lot of players. And if you're the type of player who prioritizes performance over ultra graphics, then this next setting will help you a lot. The solution is the scaling setting inside the graphics options. Go to Options, then Graphics Settings, and you'll see a setting called Scaling. This setting controls the internal rendering resolution of the game. If the scaling is very high, the game renders the image at a much higher resolution before displaying it on your screen. This makes the image sharper and more detailed, but it also uses more GPU power. If your PC struggles with performance, I recommend starting with 100% scaling. This will give you a very strong performance boost and increase your FPS. The downside is that the image will look slightly less sharp. But if you are okay with that trade-off, then it can make the game run much smoother. For players who want a good balance between visuals and performance, I personally recommend around 300% scaling. In my experience, 300% scaling gives you decent graphics quality while still maintaining stable FPS. A lagging game can be extremely frustrating, especially during long deliveries.
200. Shall we try?
So adjusting this setting can make the experience much more enjoyable. Sometimes when driving, you want to quickly look left or right, especially when approaching intersections, checking traffic, or making turns. The problem is that not everyone has a head tracking device like TrackIR or TobiEye, and I understand that completely because those devices can be expensive. But the good news is that the newer ETS2 and ATS updates include a built-in solution that works surprisingly well. Go to Options, then open the accessibility settings. Look for camera movement speed and set it to medium. Then find auto camera centering delay and set it to around 3 seconds. This combination works really well. Now when you drive, you can use the num4, num5, and num6 keys on your keyboard to smoothly look left and right. The camera will transition smoothly, and after a few seconds, it will automatically return to the center position. I like this setup because it makes checking intersections feel much more natural compared to the instant camera snap. It's not exactly the same as a real head tracker, but honestly, it's a very good alternative. If you want the ultimate immersion, then yes, I would still recommend head tracking devices like BeMyTracker or TobiEye. Those are currently some of the best options, and if you want to learn more about them, you can check the links in the description. If you are someone who loves customizing your truck with extra lights, then this next tip is very important. Many players install roof lights and front auxiliary lights on their truck, but then they notice something strange. The lights don't actually turn on even when using high beams. That's because, by default, these lights are disabled. To activate them, press F4 to open the light adjustment panel, then choose Adjust Lights. Inside this menu, you will see options for front auxiliary lights and roof auxiliary lights. Turn those on. Now when you activate your high beams, all those extra lights will illuminate the road properly, and I have to say, this makes a huge difference during night driving. The road becomes much brighter, visibility improves, and honestly the truck just looks amazing with all those lights active. If you enjoy driving at night like I do, this setting is definitely worth enabling. The quiet highways, the truck engine, the long road ahead, I really enjoy those moments. But constantly switching high beams on and off can become a little annoying. Normally, you have to turn high beams on when the road is empty, and turn them off whenever another vehicle approaches. After a long time, this becomes repetitive. Luckily, the game has a built-in solution. Go to Options, then Gameplay Settings. Look for automatic headlights and automatic high beams. Turn both of these settings on. Now the game will...
Automatic. Where is that?
automatically control your high beams depending on traffic. If another vehicle approaches, the high beams turn off automatically so you don't blind the driver. Once the road is clear again, the high beams turn back on. I love this feature because it allows you to focus completely on driving while the game handles the lighting for you. It makes night driving feel smoother and more realistic.
Nice.
Last but definitely not least, let's talk about truck physics. In my opinion, this is one of the most important things if you want ETS2 or ATS to feel like a real truck simulator. A truck should feel heavy. It should lean in corners. It should react to gravel roads and braking realistically. Here is the setup that I personally recommend as a strong foundation. Go to Options, then Gameplay, and find the truck physics section. Set truck stability to around 25%. Set cabin
20.
suspension stiffness to around 30%. Set suspension stiffness to about 30% as well. Drive shaft torque can stay around 10%. Braking intensity around 70% works very well for realistic stopping distances. Then
I don't know what I'm changing, but
enable air brake simulation. Also turn on realistic fuel consumption and cabin accessories physics. Finally, set uneven surface simulation to about 50%. With these settings, the truck starts to feel much more alive. Braking becomes more realistic, the truck reacts to road surfaces, and driving on gravel or uneven roads becomes much more immersive. I like this setup because the truck feels heavy and believable, but still comfortable enough for long deliveries. Of course, you can experiment and fine-tune the numbers depending on your preference. Think of these settings as a strong foundation that you can build on.
okay.
But the right settings can take the experience to another level. Cleaner interiors, smoother camera movement, better performance, realistic lighting, and improved truck physics can completely transform the way the game feels. I personally love tweaking these settings because it makes every delivery feel more immersive and satisfying. If you try these settings, I think you'll enjoy the game even more. And if you found this guide helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on our socials. All the links are in the description.
Okay.
ETS2 and ATS are pretty old games. Video, there might as well be a screenshot. That would act as the cherry on top. This way, you don't just have to copy what I'm using and hope for the best. And by the end of this video, you will understand the process, and most importantly, why it might or might not work for you. So it all starts here with the game settings. This is probably the most important part of the entire setup that's going to serve as the base for what we're trying to build. For some context, ETS2 or ATS does not handle anti-aliasing too well, which is why you get all that shimmering on fences, cables, or any other distant objects, especially when moving. And the game's way of dealing with that is through resolution and scaling. Now, resolution is simple. The higher it is, the sharper the image. Scaling up that resolution is where the juice is. And what it does, it renders the game at a higher resolution than your monitors, and then it scales it back down. So even if you're playing on something like a 1080p or 1440p, increasing the scaling means that the game is internally rendering way more detail. So at 100% scaling, this is pretty much your native resolution based on your monitor. And unfortunately, unless you're playing in 4K, the lower ones such as Full HD or Quad HD like the one that I'm using is just not good enough on its own. The edges look like they're breaking, the flickering, the instability in the image itself was a big problem for me. And once you start pushing the scaling up at higher values like 200, 300%, the improvements can be seen. Now the trade-off here is pretty obvious. The higher the scaling, the more resources are consumed, leading to a reduction of your FPS. And this is why the first balance you need to find is getting enough clarity without totally ruining your performance. The lower your monitor resolution is, the more you can try to increase the scaling based on your GPU. In my case, that sweet spot is 1440p and 200% scaling, where the image looks good enough and performance is still solid. I could maybe push it to 400% and still have well over 60 FPS, but I don't really have to because I got an even better solution. That solution is called Snowy Moon V2, and it's a third-party plugin that does wonders for us here. Besides improving the overall look of the game, things like lighting, reflections, and color grading, it also gives us access to DLSS and DLAA. To install this, it's literally just gonna take you 2 minutes. You download the files from the Patreon, copy-paste them in your game's files, and activate it in-game with the end button on your keyboard. Here's why this is important for us, because now, instead of relying on increasing the scaling, that by itself is very demanding resource-wise, if you have an RTX GPU, you can combine DLAA with a lower scaling value, even as low as 50% if you're going for, let's say, DLSS with a quality preset. This way, you get a much cleaner result without pushing your system as hard, which will be leaving us with some room for the graphics mod that on their own will eat plenty of resources. So you kind of get the idea of why this video had to be a guide, because I could show you my settings, but for 80% of you, they're probably just not gonna work. You're gonna have to do some legwork on your own, go back and forth by following this guide, and find that sweet spot. Make sure you have a clear image and enough performance left for what's coming next. Going from the base we created, or any other version that you found works best in your case, it should be no surprise that we are looking at mods. To make it easier to follow, we will divide them into 2 categories: essential graphic mods and optional graphic mods. There's a big pool of available graphic mods to choose from, both paid ones and free ones. I have tried endless versions, and after many hours spent tweaking and changing things up, I can tell you my first choice is Project Next Gen by Damien. This is an essential mod in the process of achieving similar graphics to mine, as it changes a lot of things, especially in terms of textures and assets. Depending on your preferences or budgets, JBX3 is a very strong alternative, and if at some point I used to combine the two and push it really hard, lately I found myself going for less and less. Another reason behind my choice of sticking with PNG was the available add-ons that you can pick on the side. These add-ons are mainly seasonal variants, such as spring, autumn, and the standalone winter experience. So let's look at some of the examples. This is the base PNG that respects the game's summer solstice. This is PNG with a spring add-on, and here we can easily notice how the atmosphere changed. My favorite one in terms of vibe, we have the autumn add-on. This paired with the rainy weather is really hard to beat in terms of immersion. And of course, the winter experience, which is not an add-on but a standalone preset of the PNG mod. I honestly felt like this offered the best winter driving experience from everything else I got to try. PNG paired with a seasonal add-on that fits your vibe, the highly improved graphics supported by proper in-game resolution scaling, and all the available tweaks Snowy Moon V2 offers, your game is officially transformed. Now, for the optional graphic mods. They are optional indeed, but for the sole purpose of creating a cinematic experience, I found myself using them religiously. Their main purpose is to provide more options when it comes to lighting and weather. The one that I've been using recently is called Weather 3.5, and it's actually free on the Steam Workshop page. And the last of the optional graphic mods is going to target the rainy weather, and this is called TM Realistic Rain with Coating Glass. Let's have a look on how this one actually impacts your game. On the left side, we have an improved version of rain we got from Snowy Moon V2, and on the right, we have added an extra layer of immersion by using the Realistic Rain add-on. It's these little things that, while optional, truly helps you realize how much of a difference they can actually make. For our final plugin, that is often used by those who want to push things even more, is the famous Reshade. This allows further customization, and it has so many different layers that you can tune up to your taste. I found a lot of free presets online that work wonders, and recently a member of our Discord channel gave me some really interesting ones. There are a lot of creators out there who are offering their presets via Patreon, so you can browse around and decide if any of these would enhance your game in any way. This obviously pushes things a bit more, and the main key here is finding the right balance. If you overdo it, your game might look worse as a consequence. And before we wrap it up, I want to open one more door, but bear in mind this is something that should only be considered by players with ultra-high NPCs and low resolution monitors. For those of you who have a bit more headroom on your GPU, but you're not playing on a 4K monitor, there's one more trick you can use. You can actually force the game to render at a higher resolution than your display using NVIDIA's DL scaling. To do this, you'll have to open NVIDIA control panel, go to manage 3D settings, and enable DSR factors, specifically the DL scaling options like 1.78 or 2.25. This basically lets you simulate something close to 4K or even 1440p on a 1080 monitor. If you can do this and hold decent FPS, you can disregard the in-game scaling. Just use a somewhat native 4K resolution and Snowy Moon V2. You're gonna have a much sharper image. So there you have it. This is basically my setup. And in order to make it work for you as well, I would say take it step by step. Start with the basics and improve your game's anti-aliasing and scaling.
Let's just go. Hold on, man. Indicators. What do you mean? Drivers on tachometer. Interior infotainment. Yeah. Navigation. Only in interior. ¿Por qué no me lo quita? Only in exterior. Ah, burreco. Company messages, finances, damage. Only in interior. Right. Job details. Pairs. Cambridge. 6,000. 14 hours. 31. Chat. Automatic parking. No. Keep mirrors hidden. What the fuck? Tachometer. Oh, the fuck do I back out? Oh, pero esto está de este lado. Okay. Do I disable it? Only in interior. What the fuck? Bueno, indicators. Only in exterior. Navigation. Only in exterior. Ya le pegué a la caja. No sé qué estoy haciendo. Eso. Excellent. Nice reward scheme. Further skills 1 hazardous high value cargo. Apply. Email. We can help you grow. Apply. I have 22. Running in Swansea. Netherlands, 12 hours. 12.80. 8,000. Wait. 9,000. A ver, ¿cuál es el mejor price protest? Pero ¿cómo sé cuánto es? Land distance, ferry distance, trip time, ferry price. Trip time. I take this? ¿Cuánto tengo ahorita? 22. Sí puedo. Todo menso, no sé ni qué voy a hacer. Mira. Y luego, si se me cae. What is the maximum speed I can carry this at? DAF. That's a big ass tanker. I assume it's gonna be empty, no? You're about to haul a special transport cargo. There are 2 escort vehicles which will lead you. Please be careful and follow their lead and suggestion notifications. Special transports like this don't stop on a red signal and have the right of way in most situations during these deliveries. Checkpoints are made more often to save your current progress. Pay extra attention to the following. Keep the cargo out of the estimated route, nor to filling stations rest stops. Obey speed limitations which will be ensured by the front escort vehicle. Watch out for the overtaking traffic and other drivers on the road. Change lane maneuver. 1, 2, 3. May fail. Oh, pues a ver, ¿no? By the rear. Started by the rear. Ah, pues sí, para bloquear. Claro. Y luego se pasa el de enfrente y al final yo. O sea, no, porque son escoltas. Ay, ese güey desapareció, ¿qué pedo? 53. Su brazo todo feo. Ok, vámonos. Pero ¿y qué pedo? ¿Dónde están los escoltas? ¿Ya están aquí? you stopping in the middle of the road, bro? A la mitad, boy.
So I'm on top of this mountain and I'm singing to the mountain because that's, of course, what one does when one is on a mountain. You sing to it to thank it for existing and for allowing you to take everything in. You sing to the mountain, you sing to the spirits of the mountain. And because I am in my ancestral homeland of Ireland, I'm singing in Irish because I've been learning Irish, and that's what one should do if one is in the Irish diaspora and wishes to reconnect with your actual roots and decolonize and stuff. But I had this little moment where I was like singing these lullabies, the same songs that I sing to my children when I tuck them in at night, these lullabies in Irish, and I'm singing them to the mountain, the same way that those songs have been sung and passed down through generations of mothers and daughters and children. And I'm singing to Mama Mountain, and I had a moment where I was like, do you think she likes my singing? Do you think she likes it? Is she proud of me?
trying to decolonize the diaspora of which I am a part in North America. Is she proud of me? I think she's proud of me. I think she's feeling pretty good about it. I think she likes my singing. And I like singing for her. Is Bralum too. Grab maggot. So I'm on top of this mountain and I'm singing to the mountain because that's
Yeah, young men are probably in need of something like this. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Do you have kids?
I have 2 daughters.
Oh, okay.
You have 2 sons, right?
Yeah. Actually, you know who wants more viable young men is women.
No kidding. What's the hardest truth about
young men is women.
You have 2 sons, right?
Yeah. Actually, you know who wants more viable young men is women.
No kidding. What's the hardest truth about men that nobody really wants to say out loud?
That men need, yeah. Actually, you know.
Yeah, young men are probably in need of something like this. Don't you think?
Yeah. Actually, you know who wants more viable young men is women.
No kidding. What's the hardest truth about men that nobody really wants to say out loud?
That men need and benefit more from relationships than women. There's a cartoon of a woman in her 30s who never found romantic love, and it's somehow this global tragedy, and then she's probably alone and depressed and sitting at home on a rainy day and taking antidepressants. Let's call her Lisa. Lisa's just fine. Women, when they don't have a romantic relationship, usually pour that energy into their friends and into their professional lives. When men don't have the benefit, especially young men, and the guardrails of a relationship, they oftentimes pour that energy into online content, conspiracy theory, misogyny. They become much more prone to nationalistic content. So men need relationships more than women. The land acknowledgement there, the asterisk I have to put forward, is that doesn't mean men are obligated, or excuse me, it doesn't mean women are obligated to service men or be in relationships with them. But the fact is men benefit more from relationships than women. A man who's married will live 4 to 7 years longer, a woman 2 years longer. Widows are happier after their husband dies, and widowers are less happy after their wife dies.
Yeah, there's some interesting statistics on all of this, isn't it? If loneliness is killing young men, why aren't we treating it like a public health emergency?
Because people of our generation, Mark, we registered men of our generation born with a white heterosexual male born in the 60s had so much unearned unfair advantage that there's a natural reaction of, well, you've had a 3,000-year head start. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lack of empathy. I would argue that if any cohort in society was, if you walk into a morgue and there's 5 people died by suicide, 4 are men. If you walked into a morgue and there was any special interest groups killing themselves at 4 times the rate as the control group, there would be social programs and intervention. But the general feeling is you don't have problems, you are the problem. And again, because of the unfair advantage that we received, there's a lack of empathy for 19-year-old males.
And this is a fairly new occurrence in our society, right?
Well, it's been gradually happening. I would say over the last 20 or 30 years, you would have a difficult time finding a cohort that has fallen further faster than young men in the West. Women are ascending, and that's a wonderful thing. We should do nothing to get in the way of it. And it hasn't come at the cost of men. In some ways, it's saved our economy. If women hadn't gone into the factories in World War II, it would have taken us much longer to win World War II. We probably still would have won. If we hadn't protected the rights of women in the workplace in the 70s and 80s, we'd be a second-rate economy to China. So women's ascent has been an enormous afterburner for our democracy and our economy. But at the same time, there's fewer economic on-ramps to the middle class for men because of the outsourcing of manufacturing. I think the education system is biased against boys. If you're a boy, you're twice as likely to be suspended for the same behavior as a girl, 5 times as likely if you're a black boy. I think the mating market has become more difficult for young men, and I think probably the biggest factor, or wind in their face, if you will, is the deepest pocketed, most intelligent people in the world are trying every day to convince young people to spend one more second or minute a day online and sequester them from their relationships. And I think that's been especially harmful for teen girls and young adult men as they begin to sequester from their relationships.
Is this your latest book, Notes on Being a Man?
Yeah.
It's really incredible, and probably very needed, I think. Do you mind if I read just some little clips or notes that you wrote in this book that I think might open up some interesting conversations? As you get older, the relationship you have with people you love and who love you matter more than everything else in your life.
Yeah, we have to, if you think about what we focus on and talk about on whether it's on CNBC or in the news every day or even CNN, we're constantly talking about GDP, AI, shareholder growth, the SpaceX IPO, inflation. You know, economic security and shareholder value is really important. In a capitalist society, I think people need to figure out a way to become economically viable. But that's the means. The ends is such that you can have at least enough economic security such that you can have an absence of anxiety, such that you can focus on what's really important in life, and that is establishing deep and meaningful relationships. There's been a ton of studies on happiness, and I wrote a book on happiness because I struggle with it. But almost every study that's been done, every longitudinal study by ethnicity, geography, income level, society, everything comes back to one thing on happiness, and that is the number of deep and meaningful relationships you have. And I think as you get older and you start to sense your own mortality, hopefully you have some economic security, it frees you up to recognize that the biggest source of reward in your life are your relationships. In other words, that's the ends, that's the shooting match. And the risk or the fear for successful people sometimes is you get so caught up in being on that hamster wheel that you never get off and register what the whole point was. And that is having the time and the absence of anxiety so you can focus on your relationships. But the people who are most happy are the people who should be least happy, and that's old people because they're the least healthy. And it's because they have finally figured out that it's about the relationships. We are a social species. We're meant to be around each other. And when you talk to people at the end, you know, that's all it comes down to. It distills down to their relationships.
You have a chapter on sex, love, and marriage, which I thought was really great. One of the suggestions you make is don't keep score.
Yeah, the book is really more learnings from where I screwed up. I approached relationships from I'll call it a capitalist transactional standpoint, that if I had a friend, I registered how much I was getting from her. If I had a girlfriend, I wanted more from her than I was giving. If I had an employee, it's like, how do I pay them less than they're worth? It was like, how do I get a positive ROI on all my relationships? And what you realize is that that's exactly the wrong way to look at it, that as you get older, the opportunity to invest more in a relationship and occasionally be on the wrong end of the ledger is actually quite rewarding. You have 2 daughters, I have 2 sons. I have determined I will never get a positive ROI on most traditional metrics with my sons. It's unlikely they're going to be up at 2 a.m. worrying about me. It's unlikely they will ever spend as much money as I've spent on them. I just think about my boys all the time. And even when I'm older, and I know I'd like to think they'll think about me, on traditional metrics I'll never get a return. But that's the point. And when people talk about finding their purpose, the way you find your purpose is you wake up one day and realize that you have invested so much in something, you won't get a traditional return back, and you still get reward from doing it. That's your purpose. You might decide I've given so much time to a no-kill animal shelter. There's no way I can really ever be recognized. If they build a statue out front, it's still not going to compensate for the amount of time I spent trying to find a home for these dogs. That means you found your purpose. And the first time I kind of opened up to recognizing the reward from not keeping score is I always kept score with my father. My father wasn't very involved in my life. And when I got older and he was enjoying my success and wanted to be closer, I didn't want to be closer because I didn't feel like he deserved it. And what I realized is that's the wrong approach. You should decide what kind of dad, what kind of husband, what kind of friend you want to be, what kind of employer do you want to be. And then hold yourself to that standard and just stop keeping score. And once I did that with my dad, I just had a wonderful relationship with him. And quite frankly, it's gonna sound terrible, I've been a better son to my father than he's been a father to me. And that's okay. It's nice. There's no way I'll ever be able to give back what my mom gave to me, but I think that's okay for her. I think I was her purpose. So I think not keeping score is one of the keys to a happy relationship. It's kind of the same toast I've given at weddings when I've been a best man, and that is put away the scorecard. Because you'll naturally inflate your own contribution to the relationship and you'll minimize theirs. And if you're keeping score, you're on a regular basis going to feel like you're on the wrong end of it and you're going to be unhappy. The whole point of those deep and meaningful relationships is to be on the positive side as often as possible.
Last year, the Palisades fire tore through Los Angeles. Most people saw that story. What fewer people saw is that 2026 is shaping up to be the worst wildfire year on record globally. The total area burned worldwide is already more than 20% higher than any year since 2012. That story is out there. It's just being told differently depending on where you look. Left-leaning outlets are focused on the U.S. response, what the government is doing and who's affected locally. Right-leaning outlets are covering the global scale, the scope, the numbers, what's happening in other countries. It's the same crisis, but with two completely different lenses. Neither version is lying, but if you're only reading sources on one side, you're only getting half the picture. That's something I think a lot about doing what I do. The people I sit down with, their stories get filtered the same way, shaped by who's telling it and who they're telling it to. That's why I use Ground News. It's an app that shows you how any story is being covered across the political spectrum, side by side. You can see each outlet's bias, how reliable they are, and who owns them. You can actually compare instead of just getting handed one version of the news. Check it out at ground.news/SWU. You'll get 40% off their Vantage plan. And by subscribing or gifting it, you're directly supporting this channel too. That's ground.news/SWU. Now back to the video. You know, there are parts of your chapter on this. You say, don't ever let your wife go cold or hungry.
Yeah, I was being somewhat snarky, but I'm convinced that the majority of the real big blow-ups I've had with my partners have been when they're cold or hungry. And so I would say power bars and pashminas, and I get some pushback there, but I'll stick to it. I just don't think you should ever let your partner be cold or hungry.
That's great. Express affection and desire as often as possible.
I think sex and affection say, I choose you. And I think it's really important. And one of the reasons I think that, so one of the least studied things in society that's having the biggest impact is porn. Because there's very little peer-reviewed research because there aren't a lot of academics who want to be known as the porn professor. And yet 3 of the 10 most trafficked websites in the world are porn sites. It's probably the second biggest activity online. But we know very little about it. But what I'm comfortable recommending for people, for men in relationships, is to modulate the use because you want to save some of that fire and that what I'll call sexual energy and drive for your partner. And this is going to sound, I think women in general and all of us want to feel desired. And I think expressing affection and sexual desire is key to a healthy relationship. It says, I choose you, and I think it's connective, and I think it's really important, but it takes effort, and I think men need to, I just think it's nice to say, our relationship is unique and private and special, and this is ours. Yeah, so I think it's really important, and I think that people have to, when you're in a partnership, just expressing desire is wonderful for both of you. And I think sometimes as the relationship becomes a little bit more mundane or rote, we don't make those efforts. So I think like, if you think your partner's hot and you want them, express that verbally and physically. I just think that's a wonderful thing. Going back to young people or young men, I think we have incorrectly and unproductively demonized horniness. I think wanting to have a relationship, wanting to have sex with a woman makes young men better men. And when they give up on that and embrace this terrible movement called the incel movement, they give themselves a hall pass not to be fit, not to make money, not to be a good person, not to be a kind person, not to think about their appearance, not to be a positive citizen in society, not to be an artisan, not to be really into something, not to be kind. All of these things women find attractive. So I think we need to embrace young men's desire to want to have relationships and sex and not think of them as being predatory. Because the vast majority of young men who really want to have relationships and ultimately sex, it turns them into better men. So I think that further down the road, being in a relationship and expressing desire is really important in terms of connective tissue in the relationship. And I think young men need to embrace their horniness, if you will, or their desire for relationship and sex, and do what most men do, and that is channel it into productive things that make them more attractive to the opposite sex. Women are very good at putting forward criteria that will make you a better man. Women are attracted to three things. The first thing is, and it's difficult to talk about, is signaling resources. You don't have to be rich now, but you have to have your act together. The guy who doesn't stay out late, who goes home early because he's got things to do the next day, that is fit, that looks good, that is on time, that is thinking about graduate school, that is smart with his money, that person is signaling resources in the future, and that is attractive. Number two is intellect. People who make good decisions for the tribe, generally the tribe lasts longer, so anthropologically we're drawn to smart people. The fastest way to communicate intellect is humor. And this is snarky, but I'll say it, this is my impersonation of a woman. I'm laughing, I'm naked. I think if you can make a woman laugh, she will grab coffee with you. Now, you can't force yourself to be funny, but you can have a good sense of humor. Laugh at yourself. Have a good sense of humor. Laugh out loud. And if you're blessed with humor, that's an incredible asset in terms of the mating market. And the third thing, and this is all backed by research, the third thing is the secret weapon for men in terms of finding a mate or a romantic partner. They know the resources are important. It's a capitalist society. I'm not saying that's the way the world should be, but that's the way the world is. Intellect, humor, okay, that makes sense. The secret weapon that men don't realize how powerful it is in terms of attracting a mate is kindness. And again, it's anthropological, because most women sense at some point they will be vulnerable during gestation, and they want someone who is kind, who helps other people without any obvious connection to some sort of reciprocal return. And that's the underleveraged asset that I think men need to display. And there's a difference between being nice and kind. People are smart enough to figure out, is this person being nice to me because they want something or they want to have sex with me? And being kind. And that is, they notice over time, if you're good to people who can't help you, you have basic manners. You take some blows. You don't feel a need to get back into someone's face if they don't show you, quote unquote, the respect you think you deserve. I think this is also, I don't think it's necessarily something you need to be born with. Some people are born kind, some people are born psychopathic. But I think the majority of people, it's a learned practice. And so what I suggest to every young man is that they develop a kindness practice such that it becomes just second nature. And again, this is based on a failing of mine. I used to be that asshole that if someone honked at me, I felt a need to speed up and honk back at them to restore balance in the universe. That if I was at the Delta ticket counter and they didn't treat me with the respect I think I deserve because I travel 200,000 miles a year, I was in their face. No, that's the whole point, I think, of being an adult and being a man, is occasionally you take blows. And you realize, okay, I don't know what's going on with this person's kid. I don't know if they're struggling with diabetes. I don't know that, they've had just such a difficult day. So I think kindness is the underleveraged superpower in the mating market for men, demonstrating kindness.
Here's another of your notes. New fathers almost always feel unprepared for being dads, and that's
It's really unusual where people just say, this is the perfect time to have kids. And I don't know. I mean, the Hallmark Channel and life insurance commercials will create this expectation that when your son or your daughter is born, that it's bright lights and angels singing. I felt nauseous and shamed because it was the great. My oldest son had the poor judgment to come marching out of my girlfriend when the great financial recession hit, and I was literally broke. And I felt a lot of shame and anxiety because it was no longer, I'm talented, I work hard, I've always been able to make a living.
From now on, you can purchase your own trailers and upgrade or paint them to match your truck. Trailers can be stored in your chosen garage. They can be used by your drivers to increase profits. To manage your trailers, use a trailer manager. This is a trailer purchase. So it's 33, 31. Potatoes. Catalog. Services. Use trucks. Trucks development condition. Maintenance parts wear. Garage. Okay, I'm gonna be right back. 10 Media, image spotlight. Fire launcher. Two hours. Bueno. We're gonna take a break real quick. Oh my god.
Welcome back, G.